coming back together. Hope we had some good conversations. We have been working our way through the book of Mark for the whole year, since January. So naturally, we have barely arrived at chapter 2. But looks like we're going to be in Mark for a while, friends. But we are in Mark chapter 2, and this morning is really fun because this is one of my favorite passages in Scripture. This is a passage in Scripture that it just makes sense. You know, sometimes you read something and you're like, that just makes sense. So we are in Mark chapter 2, verse 21. No one sews a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment. Otherwise, the new piece will pull away from the old, making the tear worse. And no one pours new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise, the wine will burst the skins, and both the wine and the wineskins will be ruined. No, they pour new wine into new wineskins. Who's like kind of familiar with this? Oh, wow, okay. I thought it was like Philippians 4:13 popular, but I guess not. But this passage has been one of my favorites for a long time because it does feel like that thing that just kind of makes sense. When there's something new, it needs a new place. You don't try to put an old thing, you don't try to put your new self into an old situation. All these things, I've heard it a million different times, and it is very practical and pretty straightforward. But there's also a lot of nuance to it. So this is the conversation that we get to have today, and I'm super excited. And as I was preparing for this and thinking about it, the first thing that came to mind is I think all of us at New Abbey have had this experience when it comes to what we believe and think about God, right? So if you're at a church like New Abbey, then I'm assuming that your understanding and your capacity and your experience with who God is and how God shows up and what kind of communities you want to be a part of has expanded. And we used to talk about this all the time at New Abbey, that a lot of us were given like a cup, and we were like, God, all of who God is fits in this cup. If you can understand, it just God is in this cup. And then it got a little bigger, and then we're like, oh my gosh, the cup has been on a table the whole time. And the story expands. And then you're like, whoa, the table was in a room. You're like, oh my gosh, the room was in a building. The building was in a city. And the story just keeps expanding, expanding, expanding. Like who I knew God to be when I was younger has just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And every time that new story has expanded, the story has gotten bigger, the wine has become fresh, it needs a new container to hold it. I used to think that all of who God is fit into the narrow ideas that I had about God, or specific books. And I used to think that there were only certain kinds of churches, or one kind of denomination, or one creed that held all of who God is. And now I'm like, oh, no one can hold all of who God is. I needed a new wineskin for that. The expanding of that story needed a new container. And I think a lot of us, I'm just going to say all of us, because if you're in this room, it's gotten bigger. And that's beautiful, right? We understand that. And then that works with ourselves too, right? When we experience growth and evolution and change and the story of our own selves get bigger, we need new understandings. We need new ways of living. We need new rhythms, right? We're all so different than we used to be, and we understand how that happens. I was just telling someone this the other day. When I was in grad school, after 4 years at my Christian college, we were like, let's be party girls. And my friends and I just like we were like loved going to Vegas, okay? And like going to Vegas, we were out there in the clubs, we were dancing, but we were also so broke, okay? We were so broke. I was working as a grad assistant. I made $6,000 a year, okay? So just go ahead, divide that into 12, girl. I was not thriving. And we were just so poor. So we used to do these things called turnaround trips to Vegas, where at 7 p.m., we would get in our car from Los Angeles. We would drive to Vegas, okay? We get to Vegas like 10:30. We park in the Nordstrom's parking lot because it was free. We get ready in the Nordstrom bathroom because the Nordstrom bathroom in Las Vegas, it's really nice. It feels like a friend's living room. There were like couches, and we'd be like, pretend like we were getting ready at someone's house, okay, while like people are shopping. Boom, we go to the club. We're in the clubs by 11:30, right, which is the prime time. And then we hang out, we club all night, 3 in the morning, we go back to the car, power nap, get McDonald's breakfast, drive home and do grad school, okay? I feel sick to my stomach thinking about the fact that this wineskin used to be able to do that. Like she used to... If I tried to pour that wine, if someone took me on that trip right now, I would physically pass away. Like it would be 7:30, we would just be getting to like the 10 freeway, and I'd be like, someone let me out. Like I can't even believe that, right? And that was I did that, okay? We can do hard things. We can, but I've changed. I've grown. I've evolved. The story of who I understand, how I understand myself has changed. The things that I'm capable of, the environments that I feel comfortable in, it's all changed. And it should, and it's supposed to. That is so much of the point of our life. It's continual growth and change and evolution. And sometimes that feels a little bit more painful when we get into situations and we go back to places that used to feel really safe, and then they don't feel safe anymore. And that's incredibly difficult. There's a lot of grief that we hold. When we experience this new change and we have this newfound assurance in ourselves, and I don't know if this is anyone else, but then you get around certain family members and you're like, I feel 12 again. I'm fully back in this old wineskin. There's so much discomfort. Everything's about to burst at the seams, and it's tough. And I think part of understanding the growth and the change and evolution is realizing how we have to and we must, and it is so imperative that we protect it, that create a new skin around it, that we create new boundaries, new rhythms, new routines. We have new conversations. We just new, because every time we evolve, our life has to evolve with it. And that's beautiful and amazing, and it can also be really painful, but it's also really important. Because if we can't create the skin in the container for the new growth, then we'll lose it, right? We'll lose the wine and the wineskin. And I think we all know people in our life who at some point just decided, I am done evolving. I want no more new wine. I want no more new wineskins. I got my crusty, dusty bottle, and I'm just like leaving it. Because it is hard, and it's scary, and it requires a lot of us. And so we have to create so many new things to create the containers to hold the growth that we experience. And so we do that with God. We do that with ourselves. And then I think on some level, we have to be able to do that with other people too. So sometimes we can get into a situation. So let's say we had a church or a community that we used to feel super safe in. We got some new wine, we changed, we evolved, and we go back into that situation and we realize it's not safe anymore. And sometimes that realization puts us on a mission to say, like, I'm going to make sure everyone else in here knows it's not safe too. And we start, like, pouring our new wine, like, force-feeding everyone in the thing because it's uncomfortable to deal with that. And sometimes when we experience growth, we need everyone around us to grow with us, or else it feels so uncomfortable. I was just reading this a few months ago, and this author has this book about families, because, you know, once you get to a certain age, you're like, wow, who is parenting who? But cut the camera. No, but you start, just reflecting on your family system and internal family systems, all these things, guys. Come on, we're all doing it. I'm not the only one. Give me a head. Thank you. Give me a head nod. We're all in it. But this person was talking about how incredibly painful it is to feel like you are emotionally outgrowing a parent, or like you have emotionally outgrown a family structure or a system. And it is incredibly painful. And so sometimes what we do with that pain is we try to force the growth that we have onto that person. And when you try to put new wine in old wineskins, you lose the wine, you lose your own growth, they lose their thing, their bottles cracking, wine spilling everywhere. And it's really hard. And I was talking to a friend, let's call her Joan. She's an older friend. No, she's Joan. Maybe it's Joan Rivers. Maybe I'm friends with someone who has gone on to glory. No, okay, we'll call her Jen. That's probably better. Let's call her Jen. And so she's a really good friend of mine and grew up very evangelical like me, and has since sort of deconstructed and then past the point where she's like no longer a part of a faith community or doesn't have any tie to her faith and stuff. And so she's just out there living, but she has a very close friend of hers who is still very Christian. And her friend just wrote a book that's coming out. And it's like a super Christian book about Christian singleness. This isn't the title, but it's something like, She Waits So He Chooses. Or like, you know what I mean? Something like, you get where I'm going, right? And so, call me Christian Publishers. So anyways, we're having this conversation, and she's like really mad about it. She's like, I hate it, you know? And she's like really mad. And we kept talking about it because I was like, but why are you so mad, you know? And finally she was like, I think I hate it so much because I hate that version of myself. Because we were talking about that, I was like, girl, you know what it feels like, though, to believe in all these things and to be in those rooms, and you know how comforting it felt, and you know how safe and secure it felt to believe that and to be, like, in an uncomfortable place and be like, well, maybe it's fine because God's got it in control, and maybe you don't believe that anymore, but you know what it was like to believe that. Like, you lived in that wineskin, and she's like, I know, and I hate that version of myself, so now I hate that I see it in her. And I'm like, yeah, now we're on to something. And I think a lot of us can relate to that, and we feel that. And I think that part of evolving and growing and creating these new wineskins is also reconciling with the old ones that carried us to where we were. One of my things that is a little bit frustrating to me sometimes in our day and age, that makes me feel like so old, in today's you kids, but it's like we sometimes learn something new, and then we pretend as if we always knew it. I'm like, you guys, we are all pretty problematic if we go back far enough, okay? You want to talk about pulling up celebrities' old tweets? You don't want to see mine. You don't want to know, right? We all have these things. We have all had wineskins that we have had to break open and crack through and develop new ones because they no longer fit our lives. And everyone is doing that, but people aren't always doing it at the same pace as us, and the people closest to us, it is very hard when they are in an old wineskin that we used to have, and we are now out of it, and we're looking at them like, you dumb? That's the bad one. I'm in the good one now. Like, you're so silly. How can you not see this? And I'm like, listen, at the end of the day, I don't have all the answers for this, but what I do think is if you can't hold space, then create space. Because if you can't hold space for someone who is evolving and cracking out of their new wineskin, then give them some space. Because I feel like what doesn't work is when you're like, you will drink this wine, even if it cracks you open. I don't care. I need you to have a new wineskin. And I don't know that it's getting us a lot of places. And when we can embrace the nuance and reconcile with all of the wineskins that we've carried, the shame wineskin, the complementarian wineskin, the Fox News wineskin, the I'm right, you're wrong wineskin, the Baptist wineskin, the Pentecostal wineskin, the Church of God in Christ wineskin, the Assemblies of God wineskin, the Mennonite wineskin, although I feel like that one still holds up, but we have all had these. We've all lived in them. We've embodied them. We felt safe in them. And when we evolve and we have these new things, it's beautiful and it's amazing. And I am so happy that I am where I am right now. I am so happy that my understanding of God has like blown past anything I used to think. I'm so happy that I embrace myself and my full identity and my sexuality and my spirituality and everything about me. I am so happy, and I'm so happy that I can see that in my community. I am so happy for the people in my life who expanded my idea of what I thought gender was. I am so grateful that I could see something different. I am so grateful for all of this, but I also know that I had to get it. I had to let those things break down around me, and I'm also aware that I didn't always have it. I didn't always understand these things. And if I can stay close to that version of myself, then I think I'll have a little bit more empathy and compassion when I engage with people who still live in that old wineskin. It doesn't mean that I don't think we need to, help them along a little, right? But in the same ways that we were, in the same opportunities that we got. I just don't want us to be a community that has these new amazing wineskins and we're like, well, we're over here and we have the right ideology now and our wineskin and our God is bigger than yours and you're just a little dummy. And because we were all there. And because those places don't feel safe to us anymore, and that's okay. But I think as people around us are struggling to evolve or to catch up or to understand these new things, or maybe they never will, or maybe they want to, I think our own acceptance of all the wineskins that we've worn and will wear, because I know someone's looking at me right now like, you little dum-dum, for something that I'm just catching on to. I think as we see other people on that journey, how can we have more compassion and empathy because we don't hate those versions of ourselves? Because we have empathy and compassion for those versions of ourselves. I look at my younger self sitting in those big evangelical churches, and as much as I want to hate that version of herself, I'm like, she was doing what she needed to do to feel safe. And those words and that message made her feel safe. And she felt like everything was going to be okay when she was sitting in that room. And I can't just look back and be like, she's so stupid, I hate her. I love her. She did what she needed to do, and when I look at people who are sitting in those rooms, as much as I'm like, tear down the power systems, break them apart, burn them to the ground, I also know that those people in those rooms are doing what they need to do to feel safe. So it doesn't change that we need to like fight the power, bring down the man, but I think we do get a little bit more compassion and empathy when we do it from a place of understanding what it felt like to be in that wineskin. To hold that nuance, to feel safe in those places, to feel comforted by a God who just chose the Baptists, and I was lucky enough to be born by Baptists, and oh, thank God I made it, you know? And that really felt good. I remember thinking, in terms of things like you don't believe anymore, I remember sitting down, being like a teenager, like, thank God my parents are Christian. Like, I'm so grateful for that because I'm gonna be okay for eternity. And it sounds so silly now, even saying it. I'm like, girl. But also, I can stay close to that feeling. I remember that feeling. It actually did make me feel safe and secure. That doesn't mean it was right, but it was true to me. So when I hear people saying things that are so outrageous today, I'm like, yeah, you sound wild, and I'm sure this is making you feel safe. I'm sure that it feels so uncomfortable to have your wineskin cracking at the edges. And I think there's so much nuance in how the people around us evolve, how we have evolved, how the people around us have let us evolve. And this is a continual journey that we're going to be doing and we're going to be doing forever. We're going to keep growing and changing and evolving, hopefully. And I think every time we shed a layer and we get a new wineskin, I think there's so much wisdom in making sure that we remember the old one. Not that we have to go back there, not that we ever have to put ourselves in situations that aren't safe, but just that we remember what it felt like to be there. Because if we can hold space for that, then we can hold space for something else. And again, if we can't hold the space, then just create some space. I think it's so hard sometimes when we're just like, trying to force feed something. I have a brother who was in the military and now is a police officer. So we're just like super aligned. And I remember like we've had some conversations to where I'm like getting blue in the face, right? About guns or the military or what prison. I mean, you name it. And finally I was at the point where I was like, listen, this is not what's going to happen. For a number of reasons. One, like, I think he still sees me as I'm 12, you know, and rightfully so. He's my big brother. There's so many dynamics, whatever. We don't need to get into my family of origin. But I remember having a moment where just being like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pray that someone in his life who he can hear in a different way than me can talk to him about these things. And what I'm going to do is never talk to him about it again. And I'm just going to create that space. I'm going to make that boundary for my own new wine. Because I am here getting so frustrated, and I'm trying to force my wine into his old wineskin, and then the whole thing bursts, and then I lose the growth and progress that I've made because now I'm so mad about it. I'm so furious. I don't even feel like all the work I've done, and now I'm putting myself, I'm like, no. We're going to talk about basketball. We're going to talk about shoes. And we're going to talk, and that's it. And that's fine. And if you can't hold the space, create some space. We don't need to go blue in our faces over the people in our lives who can't hear it from us, who won't hear it from us, who aren't going to take the wine that we're pouring out. That's okay. Pray that someone else with some other different tasting wine that they like comes along and they can have some sips, okay? This analogy is working hard today, okay? I will get every ounce out of this. In conclusion, but seriously, we have all been there, wherever there is. We've all shed some wineskins, and there is just so much beauty in the practice of holding that, even thinking that if we want. We're just remembering what that felt like, and taking that nuance and that compassion that we are able to give ourselves and put it on the people around us. That doesn't mean we're still not trying to fight the power, baby, because we are. But I think we might do it a little differently. So you're going to grab the same 3 or 4 people around you and ask this question. What's one thing you can do to protect your new wine? Oh, she was on.